Hi there, I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. And I offer this devotion as a balm for the heart, for the mind, for the spirit, and for the soul. And it's titled Synchronicity, Living Life on the Mobius Strip. And that's a Mobius Strip, by the way. The other day I headed back home it was my mum's birthday and I thought I'd take her to her favourite place for lunch, the Mermaid Fish and Chip restaurant in Morley, a place she's been going to for 50 years or more actually. We had a lovely time and later we returned to her home and a couple of my sisters came round and we talked and we shared all kinds of stories. It was a fabulous time. Some of those stories I can repeat, others I cannot, I'm afraid. And one that I cannot repeat was a local name for a common pastry product. Let's just leave it at that. Lovely stories from a bygone time, shall we say. During the conversation, one of my sisters asked me if I'd heard of the Heptonstall coiners, or a notorious story from Yorkshire history. I had actually, and then that led the conversation developed, and I asked my mum about something that happened when she was a young person in Burstall, which is where we grew up. A congregational member had visited the village with his wife, who is from there. It was a story about her cousin, and sadly, tragically, he died trying to rescue his friend from drowning in a local dam there. There is a plaque dedicated to his memory outside the presbytery of the Old Catholic Church there, right next to Lionel and Dorothy's sweet shop, which was a favourite place from our childhoods actually. It's now a flat, it's someone's home, no longer one of those beautiful sweet shops. My mum remembered the tragedy and we decided to look it up actually, and eventually, after some searching, we found some accounts. And what was spooky about it actually was that the name of the young man who died, the young boy who died, was Heptonstall. And we'd just been talking about the Heptonstall coiners. Now, of course, Heptonstall's a common name in Yorkshire, but still, quite a coincidence, don't you think? We shared many other stories and had such a lovely time actually. So many connections in the conversations, not least between ourselves and the lives that we live and the lives that we've lived. Don't get enough of these opportunities and of such conversations really. I drove home in wonderful spirits. My outer world had touched my inner world deeply, as we had shared our own inner worlds and our own outer worlds and connected deeply with one another. It was a lovely few hours. Now, connections and coincidences have been on my mind quite a lot of late. I've been thinking about meaningful coincidences and synchronicities, as they're sometimes called, these connections in life when our inner life and our outer life are just seem in sync. At such times, the whole of life just feels like it's communicating, constantly speaking to me. And I'm going through one of those times of late. I've noticed it in recent weeks and months, really this year actually. I feel that I'm in good relationship with life external to me, and that my inner life I just feel very connected to everything. And that spirit that runs through life that I name God, and it isn't about the world external to me, it can't be, because that hasn't changed. In fact, if anything, it's worse in some ways. And yet I feel in a very different place than a few months ago. It feels like everything's speaking to me. I feel in relationship, in good relationship. And I believe that the spiritual life is all about relationships. We need to be in what I have often heard called right relationships. Right relationships with ourselves, with others, and with whatever we believe connects all of life. What is called the divine. This is how to live spiritually alive. all at one, if you like. I can usually get a good measure of where I am at spiritually by simply checking where I am at relationally with myself, with others, with God. For they're all interconnected, they're all interrelated. Do I see myself in others, and do I see others in myself? Well, I felt a deepening connection in recent weeks, and as a result, I'm experiencing meaning and meaningful coincidence in and through life. And talking about coincidences, I recently came across a fascinating coincidence, and it involves a character who is just a couple of years younger than my mum, actually. And that character is from a favourite children's cartoon, and the character is called Dennis the Menace. On the 12th of March, in just a few days' time, Dennis the Menace will be 75 years old. Now you may well ask, well, which Dennis the Menace? The British one from the Beano magazine comic, or another Dennis the Menace from an American comic strip? Well, this may blow your socks off. The answer is both. Unbelievably, both characters first appeared in print on the 12th of March 1951. Neither knew about each other, as the characters were developed independently, but were published independently. Neither had any influence, neither knew of each other's existence till after they appeared. Both characters, Dennis the Menace, are pranksters. They get themselves into all kinds of trouble. The British Dennis the Menace actually is a true menace. Horror, actually. Whereas the American version just seemingly finds himself getting into scrapes all the time. A bit more of a Frank Spencer type character, I guess. Both Dennises were given their names independently. They do not share the same origin. The Beano's editor, George Mooney, got the name of the British Dennis from the lyrics of an old music hall song, "I'm Dennis the Menace from Venice." Whereas the American Dennis, which was created by the illustrator Hank Ketchum, had based his character on his own son, who was called Dennis. But he wasn't a menace. The British Dennis the Menace from the Beano is officially dated, actually, the 17th of March. On the first cover of the first magazine, it says the 17th of March. But actually, copies went on sale on the 12th of March 1951, the very same day that Ketchum's comic strip of the American Dennis the Menace appeared. And when the two coincidences were discovered by both creators, they agreed not to go to war over the name. There were no plagiarism disputes. They accepted and acknowledged that they had developed independently because they were different characters. Although it was agreed that the British version, if sold in America, would be called Dennis and Nasher eventually. They weren't competing at the time. And the 75th anniversary here in the UK is being celebrated in many ways. And one very special way is that a 50p coin will be specially minted and be made in the colours of black and red, the colours of Dennis the Menace, striped jumper. And the Royal Mint will be producing a special 50p coin this year to mark the 75th anniversary of Dennis the Menace. But not from Venice, from Dundee, isn't it? The comic Beano comes from. Now, when I discovered this coincidence just the other day, actually, I was reminded of a similar one that I was told about when I was a student minister. And this was that the British and the American Unitarian associations, when they were first formed, were formed on the very same day 201 years ago. On the 26th of May, 1825, on the very same day, the American Unitarian Association and the British and Foreign Unitarian Association were both formed on the 26th of May, 1825. And this was a complete and utter coincidence. Neither knew that was going to happen. Although it does kind of highlight a shared theme in the air, I guess. A kind of development of this kind of liberal theology on both sides of the Atlantic. Interesting how their outer and inner worlds came into sync on exactly the same day in history. What is the meaning in such coincidence, you may well ask? I don't know. Now maybe this is just a total coincidence, a random chance. Like people often say, well, a stopped clock is right twice a day. And my rational mind certainly kind of sees it that way. Having said that, I am one of those people who does feel at times that everything seems to be connected. And when I'm in tune with everything, I see meaningful coincidence in everything. And everything seems to be communicating with me. I experience the divine speaking to me through life. My inner life and my outer life feel at one. Some folk call this synchronicity. Phil Cossano says synchronicity is an inexplicable and profoundly meaningful coincidence that stirs the soul and offers a glimpse of one's destiny. And many folk talk of experiencing moments of synchronicity, such as the anticipation of a phone call from a person just seconds before it rings, the chance meeting with someone from the past who has the answer we have been looking for, the feeling of deep connection with someone when something happens to them, although they are physically miles apart. We feel their pain and we feel their joy. Oh, I've had experiences like that. It is these feelings, if we pay attention to them, that will call us to engage with life but in deeper and more meaningful ways. If we do, more meaning and intuitive connection will emerge. My experience entirely, although sometimes these experiences can be extremely painful. They're not always joyful. These deeper connections can feel like your whole heart and soul has been ripped out. It certainly happened to me. It's not always a good experience. And actually, it seems that lots of people, this could be synchronicity itself, have been speaking to me of such experiences increasingly of late. Is this happening more frequently though? Or am I just more aware and awake and connected to it? Is it just because my inner and outer worlds are at sync? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know. I can't answer with certainty that question. I can only report my experience. It was the psychologist Carl Jung who coined the phrase synchronicity in an attempt to explain what he called meaningful coincidences. Meaningful coincidences that occur due to seemingly unrelated events. His concept of synchronicity came about through the many baffling coincidences his patients shared with him in his practice, especially as he began to realise that the occurrences went beyond what could be attributed to just mere chance. His interest has also been attributed to a series of conversations over many, many years that he had with Albert Einstein. They both kind of connected in synchronous ways. Synchronicity suggests that events we experience as human beings are more than mere chance, that there is more going on, that we humans and all of life are connected and at a deeper level than would outwardly appear, suggesting that who we are, what we think, feel, imagine, react to are interrelated with the things going on around us, in our environment, that at times who and what we are, how we appear to be to others, and who and what we are and how they appear to us, they converge together. In such moments, our inner world and our outer world are in sync. And thinking about this reminded me of something I've shared before, a wonderful meditation on what's called the Mobius Strip by Parker J. Palmer, one of my favourites. So here's a little meditation of his called Life on the Mobius Strip by Parker J. Palmer. He writes, "Here is a brief meditation on life on the Mobius Strip, a curious concept to be sure, but no more curious than life itself. This curious object, this, can you see it, is a Mobius strip. If you take your index finger and trace what seems to be the outside of the strip, you find yourself on what seems to be the inside of the surface. And you suddenly find yourself on what seems the outside of the surface as well. If you continue along what seems to be the inside of the surface, on the inside of the surface, you suddenly find yourself on the outside of the surface. And I need to keep saying what seems to be, because the Mobius strip has only one side. What looks like its inner and its outer surfaces flow into each other, seamlessly co-creating the whole. Can you see that? There is no inner or outer. They move in and out of one another. The first time I saw a Mobius strip, I thought, amazing. That's exactly how life works. Whatever is inside of us continuously flows outside, helping to form or deform the world, depending on what we send out. Whatever is outside us continuously flows inwardly, helping us to form or helping to form or deform us, depending on how we take it in. Bit by bit, we and our world are endlessly remade in this eternal inner-outer exchange. That's the Mobius strip. Much depends on what we choose to put into the world from within ourselves, and much depends on how we handle what the world sends back to us. As Thomas Merton said, we don't have to adjust to the world, we can adjust the world. Here's the question I've been asking myself ever since I understood that we live our lives on the Mobius strip. How can I make more life-giving choices about what to put into the world and how to deal with what the world sends back? Choices that might bring new life to me, to others, and to the world we share. Lovely meditation on the Mobius strip, don't you think? Now, as you are no doubt aware, Parker J. Palmer is one of my favourite human beings. He's one of my inspirations, really. I love how he connects the inner and the outer world. How he does so speaks powerfully to my condition as Quakers or religious society of friends, like Parker is, how they would say, speaks to my inner world, to my condition. Parker suggests that the Mobius strip is a useful metaphor for our inner and outer lives, how these are interrelated and how they affect each other. He claims that the on-stage life is how we appear in the world, how we impact on the world, what he describes as the ego questions that we live with, while the backstage life is more about intuition and instinct and value and faith. These are those deeper aspects of ourselves, what is called soul often. That greater reality that makes us who we truly are. Soul is that greater reality that makes us who we truly are. Parker claims that we are born in wholeness, rejecting the concept of original sin. That there is no separation between our inner and outer lives. But as time goes by and we become increasingly influenced by the external world, we lose touch with our souls and disappear into our roles. He suggests that as we grow up into the world, we realise that it's not safe to be our backstage selves in the outside world, in the outstage world. That we somehow have to hide who we truly are, and by doing so, we begin to build a wall of separation. This, he says, becomes painful due to the disconnect between our inner and our outer life. Due to this, for so many of us, often the spiritual speakers, this is the desire that brings our lives into the classic shape of a circle, if you like. A circle like this, which he says means I want what is important to me internally to be the values by which my external life, which surrounds, revolves. It brings a sense of unity to my life, and thus my external life becomes authentic as I become centred. Now, Parker acknowledges that centering is a step forward in life. But there's a problem. There's a real problem with that inner and the outer like this. And I think it's the problem that's often found in an awful lot of contemporary spirituality, a time that can at times frustrate me. Because the problem is actually the circle itself. Because it's a kind of circling of the wagons, a kind of wall of separation, a kind of spiritual gated community, a walled garden of myself with just myself in it, that nothing and no one can touch the inner self. We protect ourselves. Yes, we create our own sanctuary that no one else can enter, unless, of course, they agree with us and we let them enter. Those who do not share our core beliefs and principles are therefore excluded, and we live in such excluding times. Thus, and if we exclude them, we avoid the messiness and trouble of true relationships with all of life. The circle, he suggests, is just another kind of wall of separation and wall of protection, and does not in the end solve the real problem that we all suffer from. In fact, it feeds a sense of separation and does not truly allow for a deep spiritual intimacy, this deep spiritual intimacy that everyone craves for. It does not bring wholeness, a true relationship with ourselves, with others, and a true relationship with God. Palmer suggests another way, an alternative which allows us to be both authentic and open at the same time. And it's achieved by reshaping the circle into the Mobius Strip, which has the feature of being continuous and unbroken. By simply tracing your finger in what appears to be the outside, you will find yourself on the inside, and vice versa. And by starting on the inside, you find yourself on the outside. The two are interconnected, interrelated. As you continue round, you soon find yourself on the inner and the outer connecting together. He says that it only appears this way because the key features of the Mobius Strip is that there is no inner and outer. They co-create each other. And that's how life actually is. That whatever is inside merges with what is outside and vice versa. Both influence each other. And in that exchange, in that interaction, we come together and we co-create what we call reality. What we live in and what lives in us. Now, Palmer says this leads to one question. And it's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. As I travel the Mobius Strip between my outside life and my backstage life, constantly co-creating, how can I become so aware of that exchange, that co-creative transaction, moment by moment, that I can increasingly make choices about it that are life-giving rather than death-dealing, that allows life to live through me rather than to keep it out, I guess, is what he's trying to say. How can we do that? For Palmer, this is the question that links the inner life with the outer life. It is this that brings that sense of connection, that sense of oneness, and brings us closer together. It is this that brings the pieces of the jigsaw together and begins to bring about completeness. Well, maybe one day at least. It's this that yokes all life together. This is yoga, if you like. And in so doing, we return to wholeness, to paradise, to the natural state in which we are born. I think this is the true metaphor of the mythos of the Garden of Eden, actually, not this original sin thing. We return to paradise. To use a more religious image, we return to paradise. We return to the natural state, to the original goodness, to the original blessing in which we were born. We find completeness. This is the perfection in its original meaning. Perfectus meant complete. We create the kingdom of God that Jesus was here to teach, came to teach. That kingdom of love where all are kin and all is one. But we create it right here, right now. So to attempt to answer Palmer's question, how do we make choices that are life-giving rather than death-dealing? Well, it really depends on what we put into the world and what we take in from the world too. It's about how we relate to one another, relate to life, relate to our inner selves. It's about relationships. It's about not building walls of self-protection that soon become isolation, that keep them all out. That these walls that cut us off from everything, unless whatever it is agrees 100% with what we say and what we believe and what we do 100% of the time. Because if we're looking for that, we're going to find ourselves completely alone. It's actually about learning to dance on the Mobius Strip, turning the circle into a strip. For this is the spiritual life, both personal and in community actually. This is integration of both the personal and the communal. This to me is the purpose of the kind of communities that I serve. Imperfect, free, religious communities. Imperfect but free. No uniformity. And this is how we develop relationships that are healthy and life-affirming, not inner and outer. They blend into each other. Relationships with our true selves, with one another, and with whatever we believe is at the heart of all of life. This is how we live spiritually alive. In so doing, it can feel like the whole of life is speaking to us when you have those moments. May you find ways to live and to dance on the Mobius Strip. May you find ways. We don't need to live like this anymore. Now I'm going to end this reflection with some words of blessing. We know we need to bless more. We can all bless. And we bless by giving our whole hearts and our whole selves to life. So let's give ourselves fully to life. Let's be a blessing to all we meet. Some words of blessing. May the love which overcomes all differences, which puts to flight all fears, which heals all wounds, which reconciles all who are separated, may that love be in us and amongst us, now and always. And may we carry the vision of that love with us. May we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Amen.